Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of The Unbelievers. I'm Cams, the Unbeliever, your host, and I'm joined as always by...
Barge, the Unbeliever. Yes, I'm just an unbeliever. Nothing else.
Two unbelievers talking about Thomas Covenant. The Unbeliever, Lord Fowl's Bane, chapter 13, entitled Vespers. So... we left Thomas Covenant having just arrived at Revelstone for the first time in the company of Saltheart Foamfollower, having been escorted there by Quan, the Warhaft. So they've just entered into the main courtyard, I guess.
Right, yeah, so they've had this kind of tremendous journey, and Giant almost died and revived, and, you know, he's really, really tired, and Thomas Covenant kind of, yeah, I guess, there he is, he's got this message to deliver, and, you know, finally he's at the place, so, and then this magnificent kind of whatever city made out of stone. Yeah, he's very impressed with it, huh?
Yeah, he's quite awestruck, actually. And then he realises that his awe is perhaps misplaced. And he starts to see it as just another seduction.
Right, because his awe is strong enough for him to feel like he would like to belong there.
That's right.
So he wanted to belong there. But then, as Revelstone's initial impact on him passed, he began to resist that desire. And then he goes into that whole kind of thing of, whatever, dream versus reality, and, you know, that kind of mindset I guess.
Yeah.
And he touches his ring inside, and I mean, at least he's got that hidden, so, you know, it's not going to draw attention to other stuff.
Yeah. It mentions here his paradoxical dilemma, which is an interesting choice of words on the author's part, because Thomas Covenant himself is a paradox, or the paradox of the white gold. He will save or damn the land.
Exactly.
So the whole story is really about paradox to some extent.
Right, because, I mean, also the two paradoxical realities kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe here's a good place for me to kind of check with you on this, because just after that, two men approached them, right? These are the blood gods.
Yep.
Okay? And so, one of the blood gods goes over to the giant and says, "Can I take you off to rest," or whatever, and then the other one comes over to Covenant, and says, "You're in my charge, I will guide you to the place prepared."
Yeah.
Then, this is a bit, his voice was awkward, as if his tongue could not relax in the language of the land. Okay? So the language of the land and the blood god, this theme has kind of been mentioned, I think, at the end of the last chapter, where, you know, it sounded as if they spoke and they weren't used to speaking in the language of the land. Right?
Yeah.
But how does Thomas Covenant understand it?
Good question. One could only presume that it's English that they're speaking.
Yeah.
It's never actually addressed in any of the books. And I know that in other fantasy or sci-fi works, like Hitchhiker's Guide, for example, the famous Babel fish.
Fish, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I could say then, if that is deliberate, is perhaps then that could be an indication that it is actually all in his head, because in a sense, as the protagonist of the dream, you always understand whatever the language, right?
That's true, yeah. Or are there other parts of the land where they don't speak the language that Covenant understands, whether that be... Well, it must be English.
But there are, because in encounters with... Who is it? Maybe even...
The Wayne hymn?
Well, exactly. There were various other creatures speaking languages which he didn't understand. And broke into a language which he didn't understand. Maybe even the giant or someone else. But there was at least one part.
Yeah, the only one I can think of would be the Wayne hymn. Certainly in the Stone Down and in the Wood Helven, there were no communication problems.
That's the one then, maybe.
But the Wayne hymn it said that they don't like to be seen, so they wouldn't have encountered a live one.
Right, well then it was someone else maybe.
Yeah, I wonder who that, I can't think who that would be.
Maybe the giant?
No, well the giant has his own register. It's the same language but a dialect, for want of a better word.
Yeah, register is the same language, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this was definitely a language that he didn't understand.
But there could be another reason why the Bloodguard find speech challenging with their tongues. I'll just leave that there.
Oh, I see. Right. Yeah.
So it's an allusion to something, but we know not what. Yeah. And the assumption is that they have their own language. That's the obvious assumption.
Well, they're a funny race. We learn a bit about them, and they've given up a lot to be in service to the Lords.
Yes. Apparently.
So they've given up reproduction, and they've seemed to have given up aging. I mean, we'll come to that, but that's what it seemed like.
Yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, we get an idea that there are only like 500 of them.
Yeah. When they talk about how they only have enough in the Warhaft or the War Word and the Bloodguard to defend Revelstone, they don't have a big enough army for anything else. And they have an oath, or is it another word for it? A vow, perhaps. I think that's the word that they use, that the Bloodguard have taken a vow to serve the Lords at great cost. Okay, so both have their own Bloodguard, and Covenant seems distressed when Foam Follower gets taken away on his own and he's not allowed to go with him.
That's right, and Foam Follower doesn't seem bothered at all.
No.
And, even though Covenant's getting funny vibes from this Bloodguard guy, Foam Follower seems to be totally trusting him, and he's so tired he just wants to get to sleep. He tells Covenant, listen, just chill, just follow the guy, and, I'm off to bed, So, he kind of is distrustful and feels kind of abandoned, Yeah.
So, but Foam Follower is obviously familiar with the Bloodguard, and he goes through the kind of the honorifics when they meet, and Covenant obviously doesn't know anything about them, so he feels distrustful and also distrusted. He gets a sense that he's been taken as prisoner. That's the word that he uses later on when he gets shut into his lodgings. He's not allowed to leave, is he?
That's right, and the kind of personality of the Bloodguard is also, held such a calm and committed promise of coercion and violence. So he's got a sense of the immovability of this Bloodguard, and, you just have to do what he says, and he doesn't really like being corralled into this room that he can't even open.
Yeah, and there's a bit where he taps him on the shoulder and says, "I don't trust you."
That's right. That's comes a bit later on. But that was funny.
That was
funny.
Yeah,
that's after he has the interaction with the Lord who comes into the room.
Yeah.
So basically then he's left in the room. He's not happy about it, so he kind of, he's told, call if you need anything, there's food on the table, there's a, balcony with a view and bathroom and things like that. But, he wants to know why he's a prisoner.
Yeah.
And he kind of calls the blood god back, and the blood god says message bearers may be friends or foes. So he's basically honest in communicating his distrust of Thomas Covenant. We learn the reason for that later on, with the extreme loyalty to the Lords and protecting them at all costs type thing. But I mean, he's seen as a possible threat and hasn't been figured out yet, so he needs to be kept and observed or whatever.
Yeah. But what's the first thing he does when he gets put into his room? He has a mental inventory of the furnishings to look for all the dangerous corners and projections and edges. So he goes through his ritual, which he's brought with him from the real world, or whatever we're going to call it, from our world. So he remembers his survival rituals.
Yeah, and just as he does that, then there's this tapestry that was hanging on the wall, and he just glanced past it, and then when he looks at it again, it's the tapestry that in detail recounts the legend of Beric Halfhand.
Yeah. I think that's a nice little plot device on the author's part, because it reminds us of some of the story that we only had in passing. And it also reminds him of the story, and it affects him, which we come to a bit later on, what happens to the tapestry.
Right, but at this point, he says, "Oh, bloody hell." A Covenant groaned, "Do I have to put up with this?" Because, I mean, he's just like, double-checked his ring, which is there, and no one's seen it and all that. So, like, okay, maybe I'll get past this, expectation thing. And then he's confronted with it on the wall.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah.
That's just like rubbing it in, I suppose. And we know that he's got vertigo, and he's been put into this room, which turns out to be, some 400 feet above the ground, with a balcony. Yeah, 300 or 400 feet down to the foothills. A premonition of giddiness gnawed like nausea in his guts. But, fair enough, they didn't know that.
No, and, I mean...
It's a comfortable room. It's not a prison cell.
And he then has time to reflect, actually. He reflects a bit on his journey, and then he thinks about Atiaran and how she blamed him for the slaughter of the Wraiths, and yet put aside her desire for revenge. And then he realized that he had done her a lot of harm, and then he just says, "I'm going to put that out of my mind." But then it's not clear what he wants to put out of his mind, because just after he's thinking about Atiaran, then he stumbles back and sits down at the table, and there's something about the tapestry. So I wasn't clear whether I will not think about it, whether he meant the rape or Beric Halfhand, but I suppose the rape. Yeah. Because just after that he says, "I am not Beric." That's why I thought that.
Yeah. So on the next page, those two lines are half repeated, but with not ellipsis, with an M dash. So he says, "I will not think about it, I am not Beric." And in the next page it says, "I will not, I am not." So it's repeated. I think he's thinking about the whole scenario, not just the rape. The whole idea of his being the Redeemer and all of that. A scowl like a contortion of the skull gripped his forehead.
But he had done her so much harm. If he's talking about the land, then it would be the land so much harm. And he hasn't done... I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think...
and does he feel responsible for what happened to the Wraiths?
I don't know.
Auntie Aaron certainly. She held him responsible.
But he doesn't understand that, so how can he feel responsible?
Yeah.
If he, yeah. But I mean, the one thing that he can feel responsible for is the rape.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's nothing else that he's done to Auntie Aaron. There's nothing, huh? There's nothing.
No. Well, then he shaves with her knife. So he still has Auntie Aaron's knife.
Yeah.
So he goes through he has some food, washes and dresses, shaves himself meticulously. And then this line, I love this bit here where he's sitting down in a chair at the entrance to the balcony. And it says that the darkness appeared to spread outward from the unlit room behind him into the wide world, as if his chamber were the source of night. I just really liked that. Yeah,
and then just after that, he realizes that he was becoming frantic to escape this dream.
Yeah.
And then the Lord comes in. The Lord and his entourage knocks at the door, and it's kind of quite a funny scene.
Yeah, it is quite a funny scene. So he has a stone downer and a woodhelvenin, whatever they're called. One of the Radhamel and one of the Lilianril. A wood guy and a stone guy. And they're referred to as heart thralls of Lord's Keep.
Heart thralls. I'd meant to ask you what that was, but anyway.
Yeah, I wondered,
we're not told.
Is it heart thrall or hearth roll?
Oh, yeah, right. Well,
I would expect to see two T's if it were heart thrall, but maybe not.
Why not here thrall?
Or here thrall, yeah, I did think of that. But we also have one of the lords, Lord Beric, was known as Heartthew, and that had one T in it as well. So it must be heart.
Yeah, let's cross every single T.
Aye.
Okay. So yeah, and there's they're kind of cryptic in a way, huh? When they kind of talk amongst themselves about him and his ignorance, and he knows nothing, and we are swift, and darkness withers the heart. Pay attention, young man.
Oh, that gets repeated.
We cannot afford to return merely to redeem your ignorance.
Oh, and by the way, you better hurry up because it's soon time for Vespers, so come on. They seem in a bit of a hurry to get to that.
So yeah, but then two of them disappear, and he's just left with the guy who's introduced himself as Lord Moram.
Yeah, and this is nice because when I read that bit there, I thought to myself, there was a moment where he was introduced as Oracle and Seer, and I thought I was going to have to remind you of that, but then they actually get to that in the next paragraph.
They do, yeah. So he would have been the guy who then foresaw that there was something coming in the land and called the lords.
Exactly, yeah. And he sent the lords to the Lorsrat in advance to call them to come to Lord's Keep. So yeah, he's an oracle and a seer.
Yeah.
And then we have a nice conversation. He seems like a decent guy. Much more trusting than the Bloodguard. Although it's not really the Blood Guard's place to trust, is it?
That's made clear.
Yeah.
The Lord says to him when he's talking about the Blood Guard that, look, if the Blood Guard saw you raise a hand, you'd be dead in an instant.
Aye.
However, if the Blood Guard were entrusted with your safekeeping,
Yes.
he would give his life for you.
Yeah.
But, the Lord has also come to check Thomas Covenant out, right? To get a feel for, who he is, what his vibes are and all that. And at one stage, Covenant even realizes he's waiting for him to respond and start speaking so he can pick up from his voice kind of psychically what's behind.
Yeah, it's very astute of him to think that way.
And, he's straight up. He doesn't conceal anything. He says, I've come for several reasons. First, welcoming you. Second, to answer any questions that you have. And lastly, to just inquire after the purpose which brings you to the council. So, kind of, check you out type thing.
And he says to him, you're the seer and the oracle, you tell me.
Yeah, right. So Thomas Covenant is not exactly overwhelmed with awe at these personages, huh? In a way.
Well, I think he expected to be, and then when he actually meets them, he sees that they're just mortals.
That really comes out at the end of this chapter. But yeah. Right, so and then they're sitting and chatting. He tells them about the Blood Guards and...
so Moram says that I can't really see you as an enemy because you carry a Lilianril staff and a Radhamel knife. So that, I suppose, signals at least some level of trust from the people that he's met.
And later he says that he'd spoken to Foam Follower and that Foam Follower had said that Thomas Covenant had won the trust of some people. But he also just comes out with it, Unexpectedly he asked, are you an enemy, Unbeliever? And, yeah, right. That's when he says...
That says, you tell me.
Yeah. And then so he's being kind of assessed at a kind of, I don't know, vibrational type level, psychic type level, it seems.
Yeah, and he seems to pass. He seems to pass the test. But it does say that the discomfort of being interrogated was only a little less than the distress of the questions he wanted to ask about the white gold. So he was relieved, I think, that the white gold was not in plain sight.
There was one thing that did puzzle me. Moram seemed willing and quite eager to hear the message. This is the message that's meant for the lords. He's not top lord. He wants to hear the message. And, that's when Thomas Covenant says, no, I can't. My tongue will turn to sand.
Oh, yeah.
Say it twice. So that's a funny thing that struck me.
That Moram takes his refusal well.
Sure. Sure. He also asks him, does your message account for the befouling of the moon?
Yeah.
And I guess in a way it does, huh?
Yeah.
Or maybe actually not in a way, but yeah. And then Thomas Covenant begins to get more of an idea of how actually maybe weak they are. Because that's when the Lord tells him that, the Blood Guard can only defend Ravelstone.
Yeah.
We don't have a big army or anything.
And there's a thing about time. So we get a callback to the message from Lord Fowl. Is it much later on? Yes, that the uttermost limit of the span of days upon the land. So we just get an excerpt from Lord Fowl's message. And then it's repeated on the next page that the uttermost limit. How could he help them? He couldn't even help himself. So yeah,
that's right.
He learns
so
that
he's
the blood, not the blood guard. That the lords are almost powerless against this foe. He feels a sense of there's no chance, basically.
right. So that builds up, huh? Totally. The blood guard are only 500. They can only defend Ravelstone. That's it. And none of the lords. Okay? There are only 5 lords. There are only 5. Of those, 2 are really old, at the limits of their strength. And none have mastered more than the smallest part of Kevin's first ward.
Yeah.
This is the Lord telling Thomas Covenant. So then Thomas Covenant is thinking, goodness, phew, even like less awesome man.
Yeah, it seems that the majority of the lords who go through the first test or whatever, they take the rights of unfettering and go off and do their own thing. So we did meet one of the unfettered ones in Andelaine.
Yeah, and she says, I'm the first to pass the tests in 15 years.
Yeah. So the lords are thin on the ground, and the knowledge that they have is is minuscule. The lore that they have is just not... It's not enough. It feels like a too big of a mountain to climb.
Right, and Thomas Covenant really kind of is getting a sense of that, especially after they go to Vespers.
Yeah, so they get led out. They go a shortcut, which involves walking over a chasm, and Covenant says, no, I'll just go back. You go without me. And Moram says, no, it's fine. We'll go a long way. So that's what they do. They go round the long way to the big hall for Vespers.
And as they're going, they see processions of folk also going towards Vespers.
Yeah, and it's not just lords. It's ordinary folk, cooks and farmers and everybody that lives there. Lower wardens and warriors.
Yeah, it's not frenzied, but there's kind of an orderly type of rush, it seems. But the cavity, the space they're in, is quite amazing. I mean, with the huge dome, and considering that it must be made out of stone.
Yeah, there's a nice passage that I've underlined on their way there, where it describes the gradual undulations in the hallways and corridors as they're making their way to the hall, as if it were carved to suit the grain of the rock into the heart of the mountain. So the building of Ravelstone has taken into account the grain of the rock. So I feel that the giants who wrought it are very much in tune with the nature of the stone and the rock. Yeah,
I mean, the chamber ended in a vaulted dome several hundred feet above the highest balcony.
Do you know what it reminds me of? Have you ever been to the salt mines near Krakow in Poland?
No.
That's one of the most incredible places I've ever seen. And it sounds very much like this. You go down, 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 down. Feels like you're never going to stop going down. And then you eventually stop. You get out the lift and there's sculptures. There's a cathedral underground with statuary, and it's just unbelievable.
Oh, all carved out of the kind of salt face. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what it makes me think of.
Yeah, right. And done in granite.
Yeah,
huh?
Yeah. And then we had a big meal down there. They had a big banquet hall. And we had reserved it with the party that we were with. And we had a big sit-down meal inside this banquet hall. hundreds and hundreds of metres under the ground. It's quite something. I'll send you some photos.
Right, so they're in this hall, and then it's quite cultish, right? The setting in many ways. I don't know. It seemed, the chanting and the incantations and the response of the crowd and the affirmations and
like
the
church,
unison of it all.
Yeah, it's a bit religious in a way.
Well, and Vespers, I mean, I think it's Catholic, or maybe Evensong is the Proddy version.
But it brings them all together, and it does say that the Lords sang their hymn. So there's another tip of the hat to religion. And they sing about the 7 wards of Lower, 7 words for ill's despite, 7 hells for failed faith. So they're all of a like mind. So yeah, in that sense, cultish, religion, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
It brings them all together, but it all seems to be in service of the earth. And it does mention somewhere that earth friends are few and far between. So this concept of earth friends is a powerful force. And that's the other thing, is the earth power. That's mentioned all through the books. And the fact that Berek, when he took his pledge to the earth before the fire lines came down from Mount Thunder,
right,
to save the day. So it's all in service to the earth rather than to a deity.
There's a significance of 7 as well.
Definitely, yeah. So we have heard some of the 7 words. It was Melanchurion Abatha that Atiaran used as an exclamation. And then the Unfettered, when he came, he recited some more of the words, more than Atiaran had heard before. 7 hells, yeah, that's an interesting concept for land's betrayers, man and wraith. And 1 brave lord to deal the doom, to keep the blacking blight from beauty's bloom. 1 brave lord. So is that the High Lord? So yeah, it's very ritualistic, this.
High Lord Prothal. Yeah, right. And then he speaks again and, gives this kind of dedication to the land, the earth and things.
Yeah.
And says, the only promise we can give is that we will not desecrate the land again. Okay? And then in the next paragraph, goes on to say, nor will we rest until the shadow of our former folly is lifted from the land's heart and the darkness is whelmed in growth and light. So, here I was thinking, right, so it's clear that desecration is considered to be a folly.
Yeah.
So, we will not desecrate the land again. The only desecration was the one that Lord Kevin called upon. And that is now considered to have been the wrong move, presumably.
Yeah.
Right. And so then I was wondering, was the calling of the desecration also the birth of Lord Fowl? But then there must have been some fowl-like substance or creature before anyway, which necessitated Kevin thinking that the desecration should be called in order to save the land. Is that logic? Is that straight what I'm thinking? Or?
Yeah. If you think back to some of our previous discussions when we were trying to put together the history of the land from the knowledge that we've gained from the books, and there was the Trojan horse idea that Lord Fowl found his way in to the Council of the Lords back in Kevin's day, and started to corrupt from the inside, the result of which was that Kevin was tricked into the ritual of desecration as a means of saving the land. He was going to destroy the land, but with it, he was going to destroy the enemy. And that's what he believed he was doing. So he destroyed the land in the ritual of desecration, but Lord Fowl was not defeated.
Just one small point. I seem to remember that something had crept in even before he was taken in by the outsider. So there was something about a power had got to his head.
Don't know. You may be thinking of the king back in the battle between the king and the queen.
Right. That's
so
what I'm thinking of.
The king got something in his head that turned him away from the path of the good or the righteous.
Right.
And that's when the king and the queen split.
And then the dark intervention came.
Well, then the king was about to, and his horde, I suppose, under the influence of the darkness, whether it was Lord Fowl then or not, we don't know, but presumably. And he was on the verge of taking dominion, I suppose, over the land, and Beric and the Queen were the last vestiges of the path of the righteous. And just before Beric was defeated, he made his pledge to the earth and called down the fire lines.
Could that then... So maybe, right, I don't know.
Well, that's when
was that the desecration?
No, Beric at that time defeated the darkness and became the first High Lord, the Lord Fatherer, as he was known.
Also way before Kevin.
Yeah. So he was Kevin's great-grandfather, something like that.
Yeah, right. So
there's Beric, and then was it Damelon and Lorik, and then Kevin. I think that was I could be getting mixed up there, but those are the High Lords in that line. So I suppose that would be the Golden Age, as we would think of it, when the 7 wards of power were gathered and put together. And then when Kevin was being tricked into what he thought was going to be a way to defeat Lord Fowl by destroying the land, he knew that this was coming, so he'd put the wards into safekeeping. The first ward of which he gave to the giants. The giants were able to avoid the desecration. In fact, it does say that the Lilianril and the Stone Downers went into exile. It doesn't say where. I'm not sure where they would have gone, but it said that at that time a lot of the lore was lost of the Radhamel and the Lilianril. And the Ranahan as well. They were able to escape into exile. So the story really picks up from after the desecration with the current lords as they are now, which is weak, missing lore, basically nascent, I suppose you might call them. The new lords.
Right.
And that's where Covenant is now. He's just appeared with a message from Lord Fowl, who has returned. After the desecration, he's somehow built his strength back up, and he's back now to take on the lords in their weakened state. So his chances of success are pretty high.
Yeah, right. And Thomas Covenant kind of sees that these lords, these present lords, are not like the lords of old that he might have kind of imagined them to be as per the mythology.
Oh, the lords he's heard songs, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right. And I mean, if anything, the Lord is kind of whining a little bit about, poor us, and I mean, it's like a sermon, and the preacher was calling down fire and brimstone, and I mean, not quite, but saying we're the sinners. Why have we so failed to comprehend Kevin's law? Which of us has in any way advanced the knowledge of our predecessors? Implying nobody.
Yeah.
We hold the first word in our hands, we read the script, and in much we understand the words, and yet we do not penetrate the secrets. Oh, chest beat, poor us.
Yeah.
We are whatever. Right.
Well, he feels like they're failing, and now that this threat has come back...
Yeah, so then no wonder he's thinking, like, look, these guys can't even help themselves, and, like, I can't help myself, like, what the bleep is going on?
He hasn't even heard the message yet.
They haven't even heard the message yet, exactly. And he says, look what I've got to tell them. They're going to poop their pants. They're going to bleep their pants.
Aye, exactly.
But first then, we see, in fact, old foam follower stands up and says, like, come on, guys.
He does.
It's not as bad as that. Come on.
Yep.
Just get it together, kind of thing. Thomas Covenant himself wants to, burst out that, like, you guys don't know what you're in for, but then he gets dizzy and, like, has to go away and is taken away by the bodyguard.
Yeah, foam follower. He brings them some hope. He's a good guy, a foam follower. And that's when Covenant starts to get an idea of how little time they actually have. And he sees that they only have 1/10 of the first ward of the lore. And yet, what was it, 7 times 7 something that Lord Fowl gave them? That was the amount of time they had. What was the goal? To get the staff? They were to come and retrieve the staff. And if they didn't manage to get the staff, then they were basically goosed. They were bleeped.
Well, you are the seer, so you should know. Right, so he feels really crap. And he goes back to his room. He's taken to the room by the blood guard. And again, he's kind of in that escape mode. None of this is happening. He moaned. And then, reeling inwards, he turned to look at the arras, the tapestry, as if it might contain some answer. And that triggers him then.
It does. And out the window it goes.
Yeah, he rips it down and, like, he can't tear it with his half unfingered grasp, but he kind of chucks it out of the balcony and says, I am not Beric.
Yep. And that's it. It falls like a dead leaf of winter. So what was it, 300 or 400 feet? Down it goes, and he shuts the partition and goes to bed in his own underwear. And that's that.
Right, so he refuses, he threw off the robe, which is the one item of clothing that he had selected from all the stuff that was left out for him.
Yeah.
And he rejects even that, like, bleep this.
Yeah. So that's an introduction to Revelstone. Next chapter's called The Council of Lords, so I imagine there's going to be a lot of discussion. They're going to get their message. They're going to make some decisions.
Yeah, I guess this chapter was really kind of a leading up to it.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, I was kind of expecting this chapter to be like, okay, he gets the message out, but no. So...
Well, it's an introduction to the main characters. We've got the two Bloodguard. We've got Banner, who's the one that was looking after Covenant. We've got Lord Moram and High Lord Prothal. And we've got the two Heartthews, or Heart Thralls. Can't remember their names now. The stone guy and the wood guy.
And we get an interesting perspective in this I mean, a very important one as well. I mean, of the actual state of all this.
Well, we would have had the same idea that Covenant had, that once he got there, he was going to meet these
all
lofty,
powerful folk, right. Who could do whatever, And it's now like the curtain's been pulled back, and it's like the Wizard of Oz. Not quite, but I mean, 5. One of them's a joker. Two of them are really old and at the end of it, and the main guy is kind of, a bit sorry for the state that they're all in. So, it's not a very encouraging kind of picture for Thomas Covenant at all.
No, it's not.
And plus, he realizes, guys, you're in for it when I tell you what I'm about to tell you.
Yeah.
So well, we'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, come and join us for the Council of Lords. We look forward to discussing that with you. If you have some feedback for us, then please let us know. We're publishing over at theunbelievers.co. There's now a page up there, which Barge doesn't know about yet. I only did it half an hour ago, where you can click a link that will take you over to Spotify or iTunes, where you can leave us a 5-star review and a gushing review as well. That would be nice. Thank you very much. And you can also find us on YouTube if that's your vibe. We're publishing over there Cams Campbell Reads. That's my channel. You'll get a link to that down in the show notes. So you can leave comments over there. And we have an email address that you're very welcome to use, which is theunbelieverspod@gmail.com. So if you have anything for us, let us know. Let us know if you're enjoying the book, if you're still with us, if you've come with us all this way. That's us at the halfway point. So, thanks for joining us, and we will see you again for the next episode.
Right, folks.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.